so much to cover, and clearly I want to get to the Super Bowl. Let's begin, though, with the big news for the Falcons, and that is the hiring of Steve Sarkisian as the offensive coordinator, replacing Kyle Shanahan, who left to become the head coach of the San Francisco 49ers. I'm not going to say this came out of nowhere, but I do think it caught a lot of people off guard yesterday morning when that announcement was made. What went into the decision to hire Steve Sarkisian as the offensive coordinator by Dan Quinn for the Atlanta Falcons?
Well, Coach Quinn felt he had to have a backup plan, knowing that Kyle might, be gone either this year or the next. And, he knew Steve through Coach Saban and Coach Carroll. Coach Sarkisian had been to visit the Falcons in the offseason last year. But the big factor was that they would not have to change their offensive plan of attack or terminology that, they used last season to help them get to the Super Bowl.
There's a lot of common threads here with Sarkisian, of course. Dan Quinn coached for Nick Saban in Miami as his defensive line coach. Obviously, the connection to Pete Carroll, Lane Kiffin. So these two guys, how good of friends they are, I don't know, but clearly there is connection, and I'm sure, based on what I've read, that Dan Quinn talked to Pete Carroll, clearly talked to Nick Saban before making this hire of Steve Sarkisian.
Yeah, no doubt. His first call on Monday was to Coach Saban, and, he got Coach Saban's blessings, and things moved along pretty quickly from there. Familiar with his work from his days at USC as an assistant coach, more importantly than his time as a head coach. And then, of course, at University of Washington, too, they were both out in the Seattle area at the same time. So, they also had to do the background check on the alcohol issues,
right,
and substance abuse issues with Coach Steve, and they said there was zero concern about that and that he was in a good place with that.
When you look at Sarkisian, speaking of that, and I guess that's a great thing about America, the great thing about whatever your chosen endeavor may be, there's always a chance for you to rehabilitate your life and to get a second opportunity. When he left USC, that thing ended badly, man. I mean, that was a bad way to lose your job with the alcohol abuse becoming public, him showing up at functions really not in a correct state of mind. He comes to Alabama as an analyst, clearly did a good job, gets promoted to offensive coordinator, coaches in the national championship game, and then gets this opportunity with statistically the best offense in the NFL with Matt Ryan and Julio Jones and Devontae Freeman and Tevin Coleman and Mohamed Sanu, and let's go on and on and on. What a great opportunity for Steve Sarkisian, and you have to be happy for him. But, a year ago, you probably could have never guessed this would be the case for him.
Yeah, no question about it. He was one of those coaching stars that played at BYU under Norm Child, learned that whole attack there, and was a shooting star in the coaching sphere. But, personally, everybody has problems in life, and, how you deal with them and rebound from them are sometimes a lot more important about how you got there. So, no question about it. He's got one of the best jobs in the NFL with an established quarterback, opportunity to, continue in a record-setting offense. So, Steve, he can have his personal problems under control and take care of his professional business. He's in a pretty good spot right now.
All right, Steve Sarkisian takes over for Shanahan, who moves on to the San Francisco 49ers as head coach. More on him in a moment. Let's get to the Super Bowl, and again, I don't want to take anything away from the New England Patriots. I mean, they showed again why they are the premier organization, probably not just in the National Football League, but in American professional sports today. But as good as that comeback was, Orlando, and you were there, and that's why I'm going to get your opinion, it was aided by a Falcons collapse. There's no other way to put it. Everything had to go right for New England, and everything had to go wrong for Atlanta. What's the fallout now that it's 3 days removed? Is the shock and awe over with? Have people come to grips with the fact that Atlanta had that Super Bowl victory in their grasp and let it get away?
No, I don't think they will ever come to grips with it. There's just too many blunders, all the way starting from the top all the way down, why doesn't the coach abandon or abort the play call on the 3rd and 1, and say, hey, let's run the clock. We're on the 22. Let's get the field goal at the very least. You got Devontae Freeman missing a key block on the blitz pickup. The onside kick, that they recovered and got the ball at New England's 40. Get 5 yards and you're in field goal range. They didn't do it. They're playing the center who couldn't block. People just running up the middle of the offense. I mean, the backup center couldn't have been any worse. But that was the decision they made to go with Alex Mack. The outside runs were great early, but eventually the Patriots figured out that, hey, they can't run up the middle. So, those got shut down. So, yeah, it was, Kyle Shanahan's bad play calls, Jake Matthews, couple holdings there at key points. Like I said, there was enough blame to go around to lead to the collapse. Brian Poole's getting beaten in coverage. He's been on the field for 95 plays. That's just too much. So, there's a lot of people that dissected the game, and there are a lot of things to point to as to why they collapsed in that game. There were several factors on both sides of the ball. And in the coaching ranks, there was some fallout there, too. We saw today where Richard Smith and Brian Cox have been fired.
Oh, I did not hear that news. That's huge news. I did not see that, Orlando. Richard Smith, defensive coordinator, Brian Cox, defensive line coach, are out?
Yes, that's correct. We reported that this morning. There was a sport news report about a reassignment, at 12:30 last night, but this morning the Falcons confirmed that they had not been retained to the AJC.
Wow. Well, that's what I get for not checking your Twitter account this morning, D. Orlando Ledbetter, because that's the kind of news you're always on top of. Are you surprised by that? I mean, as you said, as much as there was a collapse, defensively they were on the field a long, long time in a lot of plays, and particularly in that fourth quarter. Are you surprised that Smith and Cox are out?
I am, because the defense was young. I mean, they were given a pretty much undoable thing, playing so many rookies and second-year guys, and I thought they at least earned the right to build on it for the next year. We saw Brian Cox's defensive line get it much better this year. We saw Grady Jarrett turn in a Super Bowl record-setting performance, so he's coming along. Vic Beasley, when he's on the line, he was getting pressure. I thought the line was coming along. So the defense, you starting 8 rookies and second-year guys, it's only going to be but so good. So, I was a little bit surprised that they, got rid of those guys. But I do know the owner demands change when things don't go right. And this may have come from that, notion. But they said it didn't have anything to do with the Super Bowl loss. But it seems ironic that both of these guys are coaches who records look to be pretty good, or should have been taking into account the difficult coaching task they had to be firing them.
Folks, that's why you need to always visit D. Orlando's Twitter account at DOrlandoAJC, because he had this news actually 8 hours ago that it was going to happen. Yeah, I'm really surprised on Brian Cox, because I thought the young defensive line played really, really well this year. But as you said, when you lose a game like that, there's going to be fallout. Let's talk about one guy who did not disappoint. And you probably know where I'm going, and that's Julio Jones. 4 targets, 4 incredible plays that he made when given the opportunity. And I know people are going to say, well, I'm biased, and I know he was double covered. And I know in the fourth quarter they had 2 guys chasing him. But you know what? I look at other teams around the league, and I look at Brady, and I look at some of these other teams that have premier wide receivers, and they give their best player a chance to make a play. That catch he made that should have won the game, one of the great catches in Super Bowl history, which will now get overshadowed. But why? I still can't believe only 4 targets. And again, I know the defense was set up to keep him from making plays, but every time they threw it to him, he made a play regardless of whether he was covered or not. Why only 4 targets for Julio?
Yeah, I didn't like that either, Gary. I thought he was. I liked him against the double team. I didn't like Patrick Chung and Mitchell Butler. I would have went right to that thing right off of the bat and let them know that, hey, you're gonna need more than two. And they didn't do that. But also on the play where the sack strip, if we were able to review that play, you can see that Matt doesn't even look to his right because he knows Devontae Freeman's supposed to be picking up the blitzer. He's got 5-on-5.
Total blown.
So if everybody blocks, Julio's wide open down the field for the game-stealing catch. But Matt's cocked and ready to throw, but he doesn't get a block by Freeman, and then they get the ball back, and another brick in the collapse is laid.
Now to Coach Shanahan, and of all the mistakes that were made and all the things that had to happen for the Falcons to lose that game, and you mentioned Freeman not even sniffing Dante Hightower, which is unbelievable to me that you can be at his level as a player, even though he's not known as a great blocker. If he just gets in front of Dante Hightower, you're right, the game is saved. He doesn't lay a hand on him, and that turned the game around. But when the Falcons were up 8, Julio makes the unbelievable grab down to the 22. You have 1st and 10 at the 22-yard line. A field goal puts you up 11. You had a chance to run clock, maybe force the Patriots to use timeout, then kick a field goal to put you up 11 points, 2 scores. And I know these guys make a lot of money, but I'm still scratching my head thinking, what in the heck was Kyle Shanahan thinking? Even after you lose 1 yard on 1st down, who cares? Run the clock. You got one of the best field goal kickers in the National Football League. I'm not going to call it a chip shot, and who's to say you might not have picked up a few more yards, but doesn't anybody that's ever watched football kick the field goal there other than Kyle Shanahan and the Atlanta Falcons? What happened, Orlando?
Yeah, no question about it. It was 4:40 left when Julio got that ball, and at least, if you run it 3 times, or even kneel it 3 times, you make them start calling timeouts, so at least get down to the 3-minute mark. But yeah, they had already determined that they were going for, with this aggressive style of play calling all season. And quite frankly, it cost them 4 or 5 games. It cost them the Super Bowl. So that rests with the coach and the head coach for not telling him on the headset that, hey, slow this down. Let's get the field goal. They didn't want to go conservative. They didn't, and it cost them. So, they have to answer to the owner for that. And I'm sure, he's asking that question. But, he knew the game plan. He knew how they wanted to play, and he tacitly approved it. So there was no surprise on anybody's part that had been covering the team that, hey, they were dropping back to throw. But, when you do that, everybody's got to be on point, and they weren't, and it cost them the Super Bowl title.
All right, now I'm going to have some criticism of Matt Ryan, and that is not to take away from the great year that he had. He deserved to be the MVP. He's a terrific player. But we saw a difference, I think, in an organization in the Patriots that know how to win, that aren't scared to win, and the Falcons, who have never won a world championship in their 51 years, not knowing how to win, not knowing how to finish, and some of this is on the quarterback. On the 2nd and 11, after the Julio catch, after the 1 yard loss by Freeman, you cannot, as a quarterback at that level, take a sack in that situation. Period. End of story. It cannot happen. Why did it happen? What was Ryan's response to how he let that occur?
Yeah, that it was he was waiting for guys to break free and waited too late, and got caught up there. That was just a difficult situation for the quarterback. He had been taking care of the ball and getting it out quite well, and he just had a tough time of it in that game. He got sacked 5 times. He's under the wrist, hit 12 times. You want to put some of that on him and some of it on the offensive line there, Gary.
You mentioned Alex Mack, who showed a lot of guts, but clearly wasn't well enough, as you said, to hold up against that Patriots defensive line. Why play him if he's not capable of doing the job? As you said, that's why you have backups. I know he's a terrific player. I know he showed a lot of guts, but basically out there with a broken leg, What went into that decision, do you think, and why did they not look maybe to replace him when it was clear that he was having a hard time holding up?
Well, I think it had to do with the backup. Your backup center was a defensive lineman, and God bless Ben Garland. He was a defensive lineman at the Air Force. He played some on the defensive line here. They were grooming him to be a guard, but they clearly didn't trust him with the ball in the Super Bowl as the backup center. So, you have to look at the roster and the depth of the roster to understand that, hey, you only got 7 offensive line positions, and, one of them is not a backup center. So they didn't go with it, and, it cost them. He got a guy out there on one leg. God bless him. He been, playing in the league in Cleveland, and was no way you were going to keep him out of the game. But, to the team's detriment, he was, you weren't able to come up the middle, and, he gave up a lot of pressure and a couple of sacks, too. So they knew that he was going to be a liability going in. They thought they could scheme around it, and they weren't able to do so.
All right, Shanahan moves on to be the head coach of the San Francisco 49ers. You mentioned the fallout already with Richard Smith and Brian Cox losing their jobs. I've read and heard a lot of people. I've read a lot of people saying this. I've heard a lot of people saying this week. Oh, the Falcons will be back. They're young. I say not so fast. As somebody that's followed the Atlanta Falcons for a long, long time, this is a franchise. There's no guarantees, and we know in the NFC South, this is a topsy-turvy division. You win it one year, you win 6 games the next. It's the weirdest division in football. It seems like nobody's good 2 years in a row. I don't see any guarantees that the Falcons will get back. In my opinion, you've got to grab the moment and seize it when you have the opportunity. Maybe they will be, but next year's a new year. Atlanta professional sports history tells us that the Falcons are rarely good 2 years in a row. You can check the numbers. The people that are listening can check it. What's your feeling? Do you think this team can bounce back and win the division again next year, be in this position, or is this something that's going to catapult them in the opposite direction?
They certainly going to be some hangover from this loss, but I think when the dust settles, you will see that this is a team built here for to survive a 5-year window. You got a young defense, 8 second-year or first-year starters. You got Trufant coming back, Derek Shelby coming back. So the defense should just grow and be better off of everything they learned this year. You want to add some veterans for depth behind them, maybe Weatherspoon and Wheeler, or maybe you can upgrade some veterans at the linebacker spot.
Finally,
quarterback.
Go ahead.
You got the quarterback, you got the wide receiver, Gary, but yeah, you're right on point about the history of the NFC South and the history of the Super Bowl losers getting back to the game. It hasn't happened since 1994, so they would be bucking a whole lot of history to get back.
Just a couple more things. I know you got to get going, Orlando. I appreciate the time. Defensive coordinator replacement, what are you hearing?
3 names, Marquand Manuel, Jerome Henderson, and Jeff Albrecht internally is likely the way they're headed. Henderson was mentioned as a possibility for San Francisco with Cal, but that'll probably be blocked. But, yeah, those are the 3 internal candidates that we have been mentioned to us. And the running back coach, Bobby Turner, may be leaving to go with Shanahan in San Francisco.
And finally, we know how bad Arthur Blank wants to deliver a championship to Atlanta. We saw shots in the press box when he was already dancing a little bit, he and his wife, and it looked like the Falcons were going to do it. Then on the sideline, just the utter look of shock on his face when it started to go south. Already fallout is happening. I don't know if you've had a chance to talk with him or not, but you know him. How hard do you think he's taking this loss?
He's taking it very, very hard, Gary. He knew the team got there a little bit early. This team is built to be good for next year and on. And, they were able to put some things together and get to the Super Bowl and almost pull the thing off. So, and they got so close to the Super Bowl, it has to be very difficult for the owner to take. And I'm sure once the dust settles and cooler heads prevail, they'll start trying to put things back together and move forward towards that goal again in 2017.
All right. Well, it was an unbelievable game, an unbelievable season. Unfortunately, it did not end the way that Falcons fans wanted it to, but it did end the way it usually ends for Atlanta pro sports teams. Again, this is a city that had the Braves win 14 straight division titles, and they did win one world championship, but only one. It's just not a city, Orlando, you know it well. It just doesn't have a history of winning pro championships, but the Falcons did get close. Hey, listen, man, I appreciate your time all season long, and I look forward. Hopefully you'll still be on the beat, and we can talk again coming this fall.
Okay, great, Gary. Thanks for having me. It's my pleasure coming on the show, and certainly intend to be on the beat. Be my 11th year, and going to rest here a little bit over the break to get ready for the combine.
Well, you're as good as it gets. Thank you, Orlando. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, bye now.